Hello, this is Dr. Greg Mays with your Word Wednesday. This week we are on location at Coco K. It's the perfect day at Coco K. But I want to spend some time with you talking about something that I believe is important and it isn't discussed nearly enough. When God has us in a certain place in our life, we sometimes wonder why people don't see the work that God is doing in and through our lives. But what I want you to learn today is that sometimes God will keep the ability for people to see what you're doing a secret, if you will, or away from them. His reasons are his, but we need to understand that there are going to be times in our life when what we're doing isn't for everyone. Let's get into it.
In Matthew's book, Jesus said, go into all the land. Take the word, share it, teach it, preach to every man. Just do his will, because he always has a master plan. It's not
I was recently talking to a very close friend, and they were concerned that maybe some of the changes that had been happening in their life were not being noticed by people. And they weren't thinking of this in an arrogant or me way. Actually, it was a very humble way. But I had an opportunity to help them understand that sometimes God just doesn't allow people to experience our blessing, for lack of a better word. I talked about what we see in the book of Hebrews. Many of us know that Hebrews chapter 11, it starts out talking about faith and the definition of faith, and goes on to tell us that without faith, it's impossible to please God. And then it starts, really, it just walks us through the life. It talks about Noah, then goes into Abraham, goes into Jacob, and goes into Joseph and David, and all these different people who have experienced God and shown faith to God and the things that God had gave them. Well, watch this. Towards the end of that same Hebrews chapter 11, watch what happens at the starting at around verse 35, 36. It's really in the middle of verse 35. So all these things have been happening. He says, in verse 35, watch, it's going to be a switch. It starts out one way and then it switches. It says, women receive back their dead, raised to life again. And then it goes, there were others who were tortured, refusing to be released so that they might gain an even better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawed in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. These are men and women of faith who had the same faith that you see displayed by Noah, by Moses, by Abraham, by David, by Rahab. You see the same faith in both sides, yet God allowed them to be persecuted and killed in some of the most horrific ways. And watch what the writer of Hebrews says at verse 38. He says, the world was not worthy of them. The world was not worthy of these men and women who were persecuted, flogged, jeered, stoned, sawed into. Their faith was unquestionable, and yet the world did not get to experience their faith in the way that they experienced Moses and Noah and Abraham and David and all the men and women of faith, Rahab, all the men and women of faith. Why is that? Why does God allow some people to flourish in their faith and others don't seem to flourish? It's always one bad thing after another bad thing after another bad thing. And why is it that you can be enjoying a faithful moment, living and loving the Lord, yet people refuse to see the love of Christ that's on their life? How can they not see that? This is what my friend was kind of talking about. And And they were being very specific about one small group of people. They weren't talking about in general. But it was important to them that this be understood. And what I was able to explain is God knows what he's doing. If we were to look into Isaiah, let's go there real quick. We'll just run over real quick to Isaiah chapter 55. And it's a very important verse. I would encourage you to keep this section of Isaiah at the tip of your tongue, understanding, because sometimes we think we know what God should or shouldn't do in a situation. Watch what Isaiah writes, and he's really quoting God. Here's what it says, verse 8, 55 verse 8. It says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord." He says, "As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." Yet too often we think that because we are intelligent, we read our Bible, we know this, we know that why is this not happening for us? Why are people not noticing what's going on with me? Why? But the reality is, God, people want to say this, God has a plan for your life. God knows what he's doing. Not everybody can take the new you and receive that well. So what happens to them when they don't receive you well? Well, watch this. I'm gonna finish with this. I pray that you get what I'm trying to help you understand. There's times in your life when people will not accept the good news that you've given them. What happened in the Bible, in the book of Numbers, when the 12 spies came back from going and spying out the land of Canaan, the promised land that God had given them? 10 of them gave bad reports, but 2 of them did give a good report. We are more than able to go and take the land. When they received the good word, God had given them the good word. Yes, you can go and do this. What happened? The people rejected it. And when they rejected it, many of them were killed. They died. They didn't die in that split second, but they died when they realized that they had turned their back on God. When God pronounced the judgment on them, now they wanted to go into the promised land. And that's when many of them died. So we don't know what's going to happen to a person when they reject this good news. So it's in their best interest and our best interest to allow God to do whatever it is he wants to do. If he wants to make sure they get that, then they'll get that. If he wants to withhold that, then let him withhold that, because you don't know what the outcome is going to be. I encourage you to increase your faith by trusting God in ways that you've never trusted him before. Don't spend so much time thinking about your knowledge and how you would do it that you forget that the Bible teaches us that God's ways, his thoughts, are higher than our thoughts. What we need to do is we need to be focused on him. Lord, what do you want me to do right now? Okay, I'm gonna go do that. Lord, what do you want me to go do next? Okay, Lord, I'm gonna go do that. Don't worry about what God is doing with other people. Remember what Jesus said to Peter when Jesus in the book of John was talking to Peter, and he says, do you love my sheep? Yes. Or do you love me? Yes. Feed my sheep. Do you love me more than this? Feed my sheep, right? And then Peter turns, he looks and he sees John, and he says, Lord, what about him? And Jesus says, don't worry about him. If I want him to do thus and so, what is that to you? He said, you follow me. And that's what I want to leave you with. When it comes to your relationship with God, you live it out. You do have to share this gospel. You do have to do what God is calling you to do. But in the end of the day, you follow him. You do what he tells you to do, and don't worry about how people respond. That isn't up to us. It's up to him. I pray that this is blessed for you. And remember, stay strong.
So if you're waiting for someone to feel the pain some more, cause you ain't share the love, the grace you found within the Father's care. To share the love of God is more than just a simple job. It's Christ speaking the off a Holy Spirit law. Share it.